Evening. We've made it to episode 3 of Roleplay Life. I am Gareth from the sunny climes of Lancaster, and we're going to argue about this. I know below me is my good friend John, and to my left is Daniel, all the way in Warrington. This week we're going to be a little bit different because it's almost review week this week, right, guys?
It does seem that way, yeah.
Yeah,
it does.
So yeah, it's been a bit of a weird one. So at the moment, I've had some time off, and I have been playing a game called Aggelos. We're sticking with that pronunciation, as none of the three of us have a clue. John has been playing 13 Sentinels, and I believe
that's not its full title. It's 13 Sentinels, Aegis Rim.
I assume it's due to the 13 Sentinels game series that exists.
There is no 13 Sentinels.
No, it's just
it's just words smashed together. But hey, that's its name. We're going to say it properly if we're going to talk about it.
And Dan will be talking about Baldur's Gate 3.
Tiny game. Nobody's heard of that game.
Yeah, no.
Yeah, I mean, it's only on its third installment, and it has no ramifications to any other tabletop role-play, fantasy world or canon. So it's completely original. I think it's a bold move starting at 3.
It is.
No 1, no 2, just 3.
Coming out into the unknown as number 3. It's a bold move. I think Larian Games might have a good chance of getting away with it, though.
Yeah. You think it's a popular enough trope that they're following? Yeah.
Well, Dungeons and Dragons right now, where everyone is stuck inside and playing games online.
Yeah.
They might just be hitting the right time for putting out such a venture.
Well, I did look at some of the stats for concurrent players. It's a joke, but we'll get to that a little bit later.
Yeah, okay.
So, Gareth, which way are we going with this?
I think we'll... As has been the format for the last 2, we've started with John, so let's start strong, and then I'll falter us out in the middle, and then we'll finish strong with Dan.
Ah, yes, okay. All right.
So tell us about your experiences so far, John.
Okay, I want to do a quick run-through, a quick poll on how people feel about different things, okay? So, how do people feel about anime?
Yep, fine.
Yeah, okay, yeah.
Yeah, okay. How do we feel about giant robots?
Love them.
Better than anime, yeah.
I once had an argument many years ago with a guy, and the argument was that it's not anime without giant robots. This was like circa Gundam and...
Evangelion?
Thank you very much.
Yeah.
I figured it would be.
Yeah.
And he refused to acknowledge me for a long period of time, and it was the smartest move I ever made.
So, we're okay on anime, giant robots, giant monsters. They kind of go with mechs, but you know,
you do expect if there is giant robots, they've got to fight something. Yeah, okay, yeah.
And cute girls. How do we feel about cute girls?
I mean,
that wasn't the one I was expected to get stuck on, but okay.
Yeah, all 3 of us may or may not be taken.
I have a question. I have a question with this. Are we talking cute girls, or are we talking waifus, or are we talking lollies? How spectrum?
No lollies. It doesn't fall into lolly traps, not yet anyway. I'm only about 6 hours into 13 Sentinels Aegis Rim. I'm not going to say that full title every time. So, this game is a visual novel, and that falls into 60% storytelling and 40% tower defense gameplay. Now, the tower defense gameplay has RPG elements into it, because tower defense isn't normally my thing, but everything that's gone on so far in this game is 100% exactly my type of thing, and I'm loving it so far. Like I said, I'm only 5 or 6 hours in, but I'm loving it. So, the gameplay takes place in Japan, of course, and you take control of one of 13 teenagers, your 13 Sentinels, your protagonists. The Sentinels are actually the name of the robots. You wouldn't be surprised. So they're all of high school age, and in the beginning, everyone is talking about weird dreams that they're having. And you soon come to the realization that they're having the same dreams. And the game moves around in time travel and timelines and different things, and characters have different names, and it's sort of like a kind of a mystery type game with lots of other tropes thrown in. So the game is made by Vanillaware, which, if you two might be familiar with, made the Dragon Crown game a few years ago, which is infamous for its depictions of women, shall we put.
Okay, was this one of those ones that got banned from Twitch streaming or something like that because there was partial nudity? Is that one?
I don't think there's partial. I don't know about that one. There might be. There might not be. I'm not sure. So, Vanillaware went in a different direction with this game. You'll be glad to know. The proportions of the female characters are quite normal by Vanillaware standards, except for one character. Yeah, the nurse character. Let's just say she's very healthy. Okay.
Okay.
So, but
Nurse Jenny is what you said, yeah.
So apart from that,
John is a natural Brock to most women. So.
Well,
I'm not gonna. I have no comebacks for that. Anyway, so the characters are normal for Vanillaware standards, which is good, because the problem I've had with Vanillaware games before is that all of them are beautiful. They're all picturesque in a painterly sort of anime styling, which is great. They seem to have a fetish for food, by the way. If you've ever seen food in Vanillaware games, it's the most beautiful food you've ever seen prepared in your life.
I'm glad you clarified that after our conversation from the start of last podcast. Okay.
Yeah. But usually the problem I have is that Vanillaware games have this thing about hyper-sexualizing the women characters that are in their games. And it brings you out of the game, to be honest. I mean, I'm not a 14-year-old boy, in case you hadn't noticed. That thing doesn't appeal for me. There is a place on the internet for that kind of thing already. I'm there for a gameplay and being immersed into this world, whereas Vanillaware's games are brilliant until you get to that point, and the women and the depictions of them just pull you straight out of that experience. But that's not here. That's not 13 Sentinels Aegis Rim.
So the front's not putting you off, then?
No, it's not. So whilst the majority of the game is in a picturesque sort of Japanese setting, and because there's time travel, there's different eras of Japan. It goes from, I think it's 1944 all the way up to 2089, I think I've come across.
21.8. Oh, spoilers then. Oops, I just read the Wikipedia. Ignore me.
Thanks, Dan. That's fine. It's just a number.
You know what?
It's just a number.
Exactly.
It's fine.
Age is just a number. Sorry, wait, what? No, I am joking.
Yeah, okay.
But yeah, sorry, I did Wikipedia this. Obviously, I've not played it myself, but prior to John's talking point, I did want to read into it. So sorry for that spoiler.
So what's the time travel got to do with the gameplay?
Right. So you take control of one of your protagonists, who then in turn controls a Sentinel, which has been built in some point in the timeline, which I'm not privy to just yet, and has been sent throughout time to give defense against the kaiju. Or in this game, they're called the Deimos. They are what seem to be like half robot, like half monster characters. And we're not sure where they've come from. All we know is that they're trying to bury deep down into the middle of Japan somewhere and destroy something. It's very Evangelion-like in that trope, if you guys have seen it, Ava. But yes, the storytelling aspect of it is taking place on this wonderful, picturesque Japan setting, but the combat isn't. The combat is very different, in fact. Like the combat takes place on like an isometric map with neon lines that depict the roads that your sentinels can move upon, and neon markers for your sentinels, which are blue, and red ones for the enemy. And combat is active. It's an active time based battle, and you make your moves in turn, and then the enemy makes their turn. but it's all moving very quickly. So you need to be knowing what you're doing. The only time it pauses is when you're making a decision in what your Sentinels are doing, and that is fine. I'm only in the tutorial setting. Like, I got through the tutorial and it asked which difficulty I wanted the game at. So I've not had.
And you're 6 hours in.
Yes. I know. But that's not a problem. I'm enjoying the game. Like, you're there for the story mostly. In fact, the casual setting is basically just says you're there for the story. I've set it to normal,
okay.
which is like you want some challenge, and then there's intense, which is like you want your battles to be very difficult. So, yes, I am very much immersed into this game. I'm in my mid-30s, and I'm sort of a cynical gamer. You may have got that from if you've listened to the other 2 episodes of this podcast.
Cynical? You?
Yeah. So, for me to get invested into a video game is actually quite kind of difficult. And I find myself like falling off of games quite often these days. But I can't see myself falling off of this. This has hooked me like a game hasn't for quite a while. I have so many questions. There are time jumps. There are character skips. Characters with different names. There's a lot there to keep you mentally invested into the game, and I'm enjoying that. I mean, the game is called 13 Sentinels, but the Sentinels that I've met so far have gone from number 10 to 23. What happens to the other Sentinels? Where are those?
Mm-hmm. I wonder whether you find out.
Yeah, I'm sure you do. I mean,
maybe they're the villains.
Maybe. We don't know. So, there are references to all kinds of things, because like the game does take place in the 80s as well. There are VHS tapes. There are students swapping videotapes of movies that are called UFO Wars, which is Star Wars, because it says it's a well-running series made in 1977.
Okay, yep.
There is UFO Dinosaurs, which is Godzilla, because it's made in 1954, and talks about like a great series of these wonderful monster movies. There is one that is E.T., which is called something else UFO related. And there's loads of references to movies. If you're into sci-fi movies and that kind of thing, there are loads of references to those kinds of things. So is
this a little bit like this is going to be my little segue? I watched Onwards recently with Oscar, and one of the, but it's an 80s teen movie.
It's a throwback. Yeah.
It's an 80s teen movie, but the characters are elves and centaurs and stuff, and they play like Chris Pratt's character's obsessed with Quest of Yore, which is basically D&D.
Yeah.
And stuff like that. But it's set in the 80s, he's listening to cassettes. They're watching, she watches an exercise video, like a Jane Fonda video.
Yep.
And when John was just saying about that, my brain just was like, the 80s, a simpler time.
Yeah, definitely.
Those 80s when I wasn't alive.
Yep. Yeah, don't listen to it. Anyway, so no, I'm loving this game so far. And at you. Sorry, it's my daughter going to bed. Anyway, there is one thing I would like to say just before I come to the end of my little chat about how much I love this game, is that so there are lots of references. I also think that the game is quite a lot like an anime series called Bokurano. Bokurano. I'm maybe,
you know what,
absolutely butchering
I'm of the exact same mindset as you. I will watch anime series to the end of the world, but you ask me to pronounce it how any of them sound, I am telling you, I'm like,
The only thing I hope that doesn't happen is that actual series is incredibly depressing. Most of the characters die, I couldn't actually watch it all. So I hope that it doesn't turn out to be that kind of story. I'm a little bit past the intro, and I've noticed that one character ends up dead so far. So hopefully most of them make it out, and we have some happy ending. That's another thing I'd like to point out, that the game does seem to have multiple paths open. So I'm wondering if there might be multiple endings as well. So yeah, I'm very excited about this game. I'm glad I picked it up. If anyone is looking to get it, I would suggest that you get it soon. It is an Atlas game. Atlas are notorious for printing very few copies of their games if you like physical media. I should point out this is a PlayStation 4 only game, by the way. It's not been announced for any other platforms as yet. Vanillaware, I don't think, do multiple platform things. I think they are very PlayStation centric. I know that their first game, Muramasa, was on the Wii, but I think that's the only example of that kind of game of theirs showing up on a different platform.
When was Muramasa released?
In the Wii era, so maybe 2010, sometime like that.
That's what I thought. They've actually released one more before that, I think. I've just read.
Yeah, it's
Odin's Sphere.
Odin's Sphere. I have that on PS4. I think that is on a different platform. I might be wrong about that.
I'm just trying to find where I put it.
Sphere, that's what it's called.
Yeah.
Oh, Gareth has left the building. What's up, Gareth? Why did I expect to reply? He's away from his microphone.
He's not got his headphone on.
Okay. But yeah, I'm enjoying this game. It has me hooked, like a good mystery should. I don't know. Have you guys ever played like any visual novel games?
I downloaded a couple when they were free on PSN, but then I ended up deleting them before I got around to playing them, just because I wanted to download something else. The closest I've got is watching you stream Danganronpa.
Oh, yeah. There's a lot of people that like that series. I don't know how I feel about it. I like some aspects of it, and other aspects of that particular series make me quite angry. Just because the characters are, let's say, divisive.
Did I make you angry?
Sorry?
With Danganronpa? Did I make you angry with Danganronpa?
You make me angry every day. Don't worry about
that. Oh, Gareth. You can't respond to that then.
No, I can. Should I say to Dan the reason I may have annoyed John? I don't know if you remember this.
No, I don't.
I worked out who the villain was, like right at the beginning. And everyone was like, "Oh, you're wrong. You're so wrong. You're completely wrong." And then I lauded it up throughout John's chat for ages. I was right. I was right.
Were you singing at home? Be honest. We can find out. We'll ask your son. It's fine.
You wouldn't be able to ask him because he'd have been probably at his mum's at the time. Without spoiling who it is, there was a clue on the character's costume that she was related. Well, I've given a bit of a spoiler.
Yeah.
That they were related to the villainous character in the game. And I commented it absolutely loads, and John completely dismissed it. And I was like,
you.
Well,
but later on, when it turned out there's like a switcheroo like scenario, because wasn't that when Truman, who was mine and John's first DM, was also one of the viewers, and he was getting like super hyped and into the theories and into the logic and all this, that, and the other, and he was wrong.
Well, yeah,
was.
Yeah, I mean, it was just you can tell if you're listening, you can tell how much Gareth actually, is proud of this moment.
You know what? I could say that I'd noticed, John. I could, just.
I used to do a similar thing with my sister, with Jonathan Creek as well.
If you're not aware of what Jonathan Creek is, it's basically
you don't want to know. It's fine.
Set in the UK.
Yeah.
It's a lateral thinking detective show with Alan Davies playing a magician's assistant, the guy who invents the magic tricks for a stage magician, and that he usually ends up solving the crimes in a sort of Agatha Christie kind of lateral thinking method. And the amount of times I'd be watching an episode or something and be like, he did it. And my sister would be like, how? And I went, I don't know how he did it, but I can tell from the way the narrative and everything's going, he did it.
Okay, so I would like to say that I don't think 13 Sentinels Aegis Rim is going to turn out like that. I have made a few predictions whilst I've been playing, but I haven't had any conclusions. I've just been enjoying the ride. I would say, by the way, to anyone who is interested in that kind of game and has some free time, there is a free game on Steam called Doki Doki Literature Club. which is available for free for anyone who is interested in that kind of thing. And it is well worth a look. I mean, it's free and has a good 5 or 6 hours of gameplay in it, and is entertaining.
Yeah. I think you can probably get more than 5 or 6 hours out of Doki Doki Literature Club because of the way the story goes, and you can replay it, and when you replay it, the game knows that you're playing it again.
Yeah, it's
because it's very self-aware. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I've not played this at all. I do not own a PS4, so I googled it, and I went through a couple of reviews, but more importantly, I'm on the Wikipedia page. So I'm gonna do my usual bit and provide a bit of background nonsense about these games.
Please.
Which is that so it was originally slated for the PS4 and the PS Vita in 2019. Well, let's go back to its inception, 2015.
Yes.
You know how they went to an unnamed toy manufacturer and said, "Look, we'd like to do a range of toys," and then 5 years later, they're like, "Oh, actually, we have a video game instead."
When you say unnamed toy manufacturer, was it the kind of toy manufacturer that fetches out a level of anger towards me?
No.
Right.
I would mention them by name. It's more exciting for the content if I did. But it actually is listed as unnamed because they went to the press themselves and said it, but then didn't declare the name. So It could be anything. But originally scheduled for a 2018 release, it was pushed back to 2019. And that was the release. It was November 2019. It was released in Japan. But due to COVID, the localization didn't happen as quick over here and over there for obvious reasons. Because
I'd just like to say quickly that the localization is brilliant. There have definitely been some cases in the past where localization has not been up to snuff. But I like to think that most major releases, especially from Atlus in particular, have been really, really good lately. In the past few years. So
I think that's one of the reasons they delayed it, honestly. I mean, they had the COVID situation, and whilst everyone was like, "Oh, well, the voice actors, they're all at home, they can all do the recording." Not every single voice actor in the world has an entire setup. They like to be in studios because usually these are table reads that occur, so it's all very different. But yeah, so then September 22nd this year, it's now been released. So it's been out for 2 weeks. So you've had it for what, a week?
No, I bought it on Saturday. So
oh right, okay then.
I promised myself that I would only buy this once I edited the second episode of our podcast. So it was a little treat for myself.
A little treat, and then for anyone who we're just going to pull back the curtain, we actually record these on Mondays. So what you're actually hearing is immediately after the podcast release.
Yeah, it took me all week. I have a full-time job, so I mean it's not the most easiest thing to do when you're a parent as well. Just get my pity party going. It took me a while to do that. So
let's play the violin for John.
Nice.
But then just the final point about this is that I have looked into it a little bit. I'm not going to spoil anything else for you since I already spoiled one thing for you.
Yeah, please don't.
I know how it's going to end, or how. But and the reason why it is important, I think do know this bit, is that the fact that it isn't a continuous. It jumps around a lot, and I'm trying to think of what it's called.
Yeah,
what's it called when that happens?
Time slip or time stream or something like that.
Sorry, I meant the format in general. It's a non-linear
storytelling.
Yeah.
Right, sorry. There's a term in the game.
Technical term, yeah. So I mean,
narrative.
It looks interesting. It's not 100% my thing. I am not a massive fan of visual novels, if I'm honest. Purely because, if I'm not going to lie, and it makes me feel really lazy when I'm saying this, but if it's a visual novel style game, why can't I just watch an anime?
Because there are choices to be made.
Yeah, I guess.
And there are combat elements. So
yeah, the combat elements is different, I suppose, with this thing.
Let me justify it a little bit more, because when I got through the tutorial area, it gave me this these 3 specific areas that I could choose from. So I could choose to either do some missions, some combat, or I could choose to do some story elements, or I could look into the lore of the characters. And there's a nice loop that goes on. You can do it in whichever way that you wish. So if you're getting tired of story elements, you can go and do some combat or read. some lore. And the way that works is that when you do well in combat, you get points that will unlock things in the lore section, as well as story elements will unlock more options in the lore section. So there's a nice loop that keeps you going back and doing things.
Okay, so you're not going to focus on one thing explicitly?
No, you can only get so far if you do that.
Yeah, okay. Well, just remind, I know Garrett's going to probably have his a little bit of input now, but I want to come back to the non-linear format to do with the film that I saw recently.
Okay.
And I know we'll meander a lot, but, I want to give 13 Sentinels Aegis Rim the kind of juice it needs, because, we are talking about it all in one, so, and then we'll come back to mine. So Gareth, what are your take-ins? What are you thinking?
Well, for me, it sounds an interesting take, especially with the time fragmentation concept. I always quite enjoy how a narrative, especially if it's using time jumps to create a non-linear plot point. I always enjoy how a writer or an author will try and levy that together. A little bit like John once commented about how we started with your group of characters in the previous D&D campaign, and how they ended up doing lots of very different things but ending up in the same place. Sometimes for me, the issue I have, a little bit like Dan says, with a visual novel, is I always feel like the gameplay for some games like that can be a shoehorn, because does it really add to the drama of the story by having control of the gameplay?
I'm not sure, because I haven't failed any of the missions yet. I would hope that if I failed any of the missions, then there might be a continuation, but I get the feeling that there probably isn't. There are branching paths within the story elements, the story side of the game that I've played so far. I haven't noticed any of that on the battle.
So it's not like Fire Emblem, for example, where the original run of Fire Emblem games up until Fire Emblem Awakening, I believe, permadeath was what happened. So if you lost a character in the game, you wouldn't get their epilogue because they died.
I would like to say that the story is stronger in this game than it is in the Fire Emblem games.
Get that dig in there early. It's okay,
well,
John.
No, I don't have a problem with the Fire Emblem games per se in terms of story. What I will say is that it wouldn't be as easy to write out characters, to have this narrative that fits together as well as it seems to be doing so far. I mean, I might report back on this next week just to see how it's going. From what I understand, the game's only about 25 hours long. I hope to have finished it by next week. So I might come back eating some humble pie. But for the time being, I'm enjoying this. And the story in Fire Emblem isn't as good as this. So
yeah, that's fine. I mean, Fire Emblem, the narrative is kind of secondary to the fact that it's a series of tactical maps.
Yeah. But
what I'm trying to sort of say is, the issue sometimes, and it makes me think of when I was starting to DM for D&D, one guy basically commenting that, like, sometimes you want to try and railroad your players to be a certain type of character, and you sort of take the agency away from the player. Whereas you do get a lot of D&D people now who seem to think like what they call sandbox and open world is the way you do it, and it's like, oh, our characters are in a free world and we can do everything, when it's like there's a combination of on rails and character development of the player.
Yeah. And
sometimes I won't, like, in a video game, usually you're on a rail somewhere down the line. There's a loop in the narrative, whereas when a game is purposely a narrative, a story, as 13 Sentinels is, the gameplay, I wonder if the gameplay is a secondary issue.
I mean, yes, I do get that feeling. And I would argue that for me personally, open world games can definitely get boring. For me, a story always comes first. Story and characterizations that I enjoy. I may be getting lazy in my old age, but I want to be told a story.
I think people always will crave a structure and a direction. And that's the problem, is that lots of people go on about the desire for choice, and Skyrim is brilliant because I can go off and do all these side quests, this and the other. It's like, well, yeah, that's true, but you're not going to get anywhere until you finish the game, and then all that happens is the same X amount of side quests will just respawn in the towns and villages. And
the thing about Skyrim, though, sorry to interrupt, is that a lot of people think that the best part of Skyrim is the Thieves Guild, right? The Thieves Guild part of it. That is as a heavy narrative part of the game as you do find in that game. And lots of people enjoy that particular story and say that's the best part of the game. Well, it's a narrative heavy part of the game. It doesn't have much to do with the open world part of it. So, especially from my perspective, when I played that game, that was definitely the part I enjoyed most. But I'm just digging a hole for myself saying that open world games suck. They don't.
No. Yeah, they don't. It is, yeah.
But
I see where you're going with that,
Yeah. Well, that's what I'm trying to say is, is option paralysis better than, you've got two choices? Is option paralysis better than yes or no? Is 20 questions a better game than Cluedo? Where's this moving? Yeah. So just to quickly wrap it up, John, 13 Sentinels, give me your elevator pitch review and how you feel about it.
Giant mechs, kick-ass storytelling. One of the first lines in the game is "Get in our robots and fight," which is a strong opening line.
Yeah. It tells you what to do,
I mean, in my head, I've got the chaotic dissociative of getting our robot and fight, and it's just like just a bunch of drunks in a pub climbing into a mech.
I'm just picturing Voltron on a bender at this point.
Yeah.
That's the missing episodes.
Yeah.
Any negatives quickly before we shuffle along?
It's a little bit early for me to have negatives because I'm kind of on a hype train, but
that's fine.
No, the combat could have been a little bit deeper, but there is. One of the characters did mention that there is some upgrade paths to be taken with the mechs as well. I haven't actually got into that part of the game yet, so I think I will definitely try and complete the game this week. From what I remember reading, it's not that long a game, and I might come back to it next week and just tell everybody how I got on with it. But for now, I'm enjoying the hell out of it.
We'll put a segment in for you.
Yeah.
Before you move on, I do want to jump in with my Tenet bit. So just is this a suitable time?
Tender piece, go for it.
So non-linear formats. Whilst I was away recently, and I went to see the new Christopher Nolan film. Has anyone seen it? Tenet.
Is this Tenet? Yeah.
Yeah. Tenet.
No, and even for a Christopher Nolan film, I had to, when you have to Wikipedia the trailer to be like, what's going on?
That trailer, you think you know what's happening. You have no idea.
No,
I'm sure.
I have no clue.
Okay, then by Googling it, you tend to think you know what's happening. You don't until you see that film. I went there with my other half, and we were two of the only people in the cinema. And it's a good 2.5 hour, 3 hour film. It was. We went in and we didn't leave for the toilet once. We didn't look at our phones once. We were glued to that screen. That is 2 movies in one, and that's not an understatement. And even for Christopher Nolan, that was far out. I'm telling you. You want to talk about non-linear? Like, the way that all works is so confusing and yet so satisfying.
Dumb question here. Is Inception a Christopher Nolan?
It is indeed. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
I remember,
it wasn't a dumb question, but
I remember going to see that movie with my sister, my wife, and my sister's boyfriend at the time, and I remember being glued to the screen, having watched it and enjoyed it, and then the drive back. I was driving back, and all the while, more or less giving a viewpoint presentation on how the movie actually got from point A to point B to point Z. because nobody else in the cast seemed to understand what the hell had just happened.
Has anybody here seen the movie Memento?
I have not, no.
No, it's on my bucket list of shame.
Yeah. It is Guy Pearce is the main character.
Yes.
And it is... On the DVD, they released a hidden feature to watch the film in chronological order. So the actual time sections... but his character has like a cognitive dissonance problem, and he basically wakes up and he forgets where he is.
I remember this now. I have seen it. I've seen it a very long time ago. When did this come out? 2000. Yeah, that would make sense. Yeah,
the guy with tattoos on his body.
He covers himself with tattoos that he makes himself with a needle and a biro. Yeah. And Gary Oldman's in it. And Gary Oldman's manipulating him as well.
Spoilers for a 20-year-old film. Come on.
I'm joking. I remember watching that with a co-worker after we'd finished a shift. And both of us, the first time, we were like, what? And I watched it again. And it's one of those where like the last 3 or 4 scenes really pull everything together for you. They're like, it's just like a load of loose clothing and then you just do that and you're like, oh my God, yeah.
Yeah, that's another Christopher Nolan film. To
bring it back to the game, several of the characters have chats about movies that they've watched and have chats just like this in the game.
Yeah.
So
it was always related when I brought it up.
It's always related. Yeah.
Yeah, but I wholeheartedly recommend. We're going to move on from this because I didn't want to spend too much time on it. Yeah. Wholeheartedly recommend watching it. Go in there like you're going to have to think about the film. It is not for casual viewing. But when you think about it, I mean, so there's a few major twists. I completely missed one of them. Like I went, okay, but one of them, I literally had it in my head, and I was like, right. In fact, I did pull out my phone for this, and I typed it into a note, and I put it away, and was like, right, I'm going to save that till the end. And I was right about it. So it was one of them. You think about it, it's not as, I mean, Inception was like watching that the first time. But I managed to get 10 at the first time, I think.
Yeah.
There could be many other things I've missed. But yeah, I wholeheartedly recommend. I know we normally talk about gaming on the podcast, but we do also do Meander. So, Gareth, apologies. Back over to you with that one.
Don't worry. So, as I was saying, it's kind of a review week this week. As some people may have heard in the podcast, I've done my best to stifle it. I am off with illness at the moment. Yes, that illness. And I felt nostalgic and a little bit like when you're poorly as a kid. One of the things my mum used to do was we used to rent a video out. I'm not allowed to go out. So instead I cruised the PlayStation Network. And there was a game that visually spoke to me, and I'd kind of seen it advertised a little bit before Christmas. But I didn't want to spend £20 on it. So I think I picked it up for about £4.30, and it's a game called Aggelos, which has been distributed by P-Cube, and the guy who made it there is not even a hint of hiding his basis. I believe he's called Wonderboy Bovi or Boyi, and Aggelos is basically a modern take on the old Monster Boy, the Wonder Boy in Monsterland games, which for me, the best one was the second Wonder Boy game, which is Wonder Boy in Monsterland, which was on the Sega Master System, which I used to borrow off one of my cousins. And I never finished it. And it was one of those things where, because of the way my cousins and my birthdays work, is he's 1981 and I'm 1982, but he's January and I'm December. So really it's 2 years age difference. And he was that age where like he was a little bit more competent and a little bit older than me, and I was like 6, so you just jumped and spammed buttons.
Yep.
And he was like, oh yeah, I finished this game, blah blah blah. I was like, could get fairly far with it, but like we only used to lend games to each other for a week. So Aggelos is based on Wonder Boy Monsterland, and it is kind of it's 16-bit style graphics, and it's a slightly non-linear adventure game, and it's very basic. You've got jump, you've got slash, like the first thing that happens to you is you leave your little house, you walk into the next screen into the forest, and a princess comes running to you, and basically she comes under attack from a goblin. You kill the goblin.
Yep.
Yeah. The goblin looks remarkably like the Super Nintendo version of the gargoyle from Super Ghouls and Ghosts, known as Firebrand.
Oh yeah.
Who I think is he the level 1 boss?
Yes, he is.
The red demon.
Yep.
He looks like him without the wings on.
You know what?
Is the game as hard as Ghouls and Ghosts?
Yeah. You beat that guy, you go to the castle, you tell the king that you've got the princess, and then you end up, like all people, it's like, some bad guys turned up and stolen the elemental powers and were worried he's going to create a dark dimension. Will you go and find the elemental powers? And clearly you just go, yeah, sure. Yeah, I'll go on this quest, risking my life.
Hey, John, is that not Garrett's D&D campaign?
All of my D&D campaigns are very...
I was just asking the question. Don't want to cause any issues here.
Yeah.
It's very simple platform attack game, and I do, as much as it twinges the nostalgia for me, and I think it's a nice little game. I've put about 4 or 5 hours into it. It does suffer some of the old 16-bit adventure platform game problems, which are judging the range of your sword attack can be really awkward because sometimes the sword looks like it goes further than it actually does.
So
one of the things
people's face.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Yeah. One of the other things that I did is I ended up in a town that was completely in the opposite direction to where I was meant to be going. So I ended up buying the level 5 armor and sword just because I was there. I was like, yeah, sure, why not? It has some intriguing mechanical choices. One of the things that I found a problem is at the moment is it has a combination of you have elemental powers from when you collect the items, but you also have skill attacks. So one of the first things is you meet Master Mole, and he teaches you how to do a jump attack and attack downwards. And then you have Master Flea, who teaches you to do a jump and an air slice attack so that you can get increased air mobility, like a double jump.
So
the problem
the elemental attacks use magic points, I'm going to guess. Do the skill-based attacks use any sort of metric?
They use not... No, the metric basically is that you can only use one.
Right.
So later on, I believe from some of the advertisement stuff is that you can do a double air slash and you can do a jumping side slash rather than just a vertical double jump style.
Yeah.
One of the issues that I've got, and I actually have my controller here, is X is jump, square is attack, and circle is the element button.
Okay.
The problem is you've got with this is all the elements are basically this button and then a combination of directions.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the issues I've got is, so for example, I've just learned off Master Flea the jump attack. So it's jump, up, and attack, and then you do the air slash for the second jump. But there's times where I press jump and I'm holding up ready to do the thing, and it will do the air slash attack without me actually touching the square button. So there's some of the reviews that I watched, they were like, oh, the controls are super smooth in this, and I found that some, especially in the fire temple that I'm in, where you have to use the jump attack, it's really frustrating. Or the other frustrating thing I find is with the element button is you accidentally, the way I've done them so far is I've done the earth temple, the water temple, and I'm onto the fire temple.
How hard was the water temple?
It was not as frustrating as The Legend of Zelda, if that's any help.
Everyone's going to ask that question, so I figured I would too.
And the boss fight was kind of... One of the things with Aggelos with the boss fights is they're a weird combination of strategy and just mashing. Like you can, in certain boss fights, if you just stand in the right position, you can just chunk away and then bounce off.
Is that a problem?
Yes and no, because there's moments where you feel like this game has like a really good skill level, and then there's other points where it just feels like
mashy.
Yeah, it just feels not that well put together. And I'm sure there'll be someone who comes across this and they're like, "Oh, you're just a terrible player and you can't do this, that, and the other."
I was going to say,
which
your
is probably
complaints so far, like I would say, if you put those complaints onto Reddit, it would be just like 50 posts of people just saying "get good."
Get good.
That is a downvote if I've ever seen one. If you put it on Reddit, I'm telling you that.
Yeah.
But like as a narrative, like the little storyline's been quite cool. One of the little missions that I quite liked is you go into a town and there's a shop selling a book for 10,000 gold or whatever the currency is. It's just like a generic currency. But you talk to this guy in a shop and he's like, "Oh, if you kill the rats in my basement, I've got a coupon and I want the book from the shop." And then there's like a little problem solving where it's like, "Oh, if you talk to the guy upstairs and you jump up the platforms, which are the stairs, and one of them breaks and it permanently breaks. So you have to find a way outside of the building to get in and stuff." And there's a lot of great retro nostalgia stuff. And I just feel that, especially seeing as you have made a game for this style of controller, it's available on Xbox, PlayStation, Switch, and the PC. And I appreciate you wanting that retro nostalgia. But if you've got the options available to do that, why don't you not utilize the technology? Even if...
You mean use all the buttons, is what you thought? Yeah.
Basically, it's like utilize the technology, because the frustration I sometimes have is if you want to use the bubble attack, so you hold down and then the element, and then you get a bubble shield. But then if you click it wrong, you accidentally throw the earth attack out. Or now that I've got the fireball, the other thing that might happen is I accidentally throw a fireball, which is just the element button.
So am I right in saying that there are 4 basic elements that you can use?
Yeah.
Why not just assign one of those and then a direction to each of the shoulder buttons?
Yeah, or why not just use a shoulder button per element?
That's what I'm saying. Like hold down L1 for Earth and then use a direction button to say, do a different skill with that element.
Yeah.
Do they do anything, the shoulder buttons in the game?
No, nothing at all.
Okay.
So after saying that, by the way, Gareth, I'd like to pitch an idea to you guys. Okay, so I'm in an isekai, another world. Okay, and my game is that I'm a rat catcher. Because the number of games that I've heard of in fantasy settings where the people have problems with rats, I would imagine that there would be a full game's worth of content of you just going around figuring out ways to deal with rats. Because everyone in those fantasy worlds has problems with them, it seems.
Yeah. Maybe that's... Me and you should just go to Wizards and it's like, right, one of the classes, rat catcher.
That's not bad, actually. I'll cut that bit out. Dan, let's cut this bit out of the audio. Okay?
Yeah, you're not going to get a rat catcher, unfortunately. It's hard enough to get a class in there.
Just a very low-level fighter.
Yeah. Everyone's a rat catcher at low level.
We were talking about rats as a problem and as a plotline. Shining Force 2.
Yes.
If it wasn't for rats.
If it wasn't for rats, yeah. Oh dear.
Sorry.
Oh, it's go on.
But yeah, Aggelos, I'm enjoying it, but that one little frustration, which is, I can understand where part of me is like, I get it. It's like you want it to be retro and you want it to be. It's very much like the Mega Drive look of Wonder Boy.
Yeah.
Because they re-released Wonder Boy 3, Wonder Boy Monsterland, didn't they? They call it the Dragon's Trap.
That's right.
I believe in the re-release. The artwork looks amazing.
Mm-hmm.
I do not have fond memories of Wonder Boy in Monsterland, the Dragon's Trap. I remember it being, as a kid, frustrating because you had to unlock all the different animal powers to eventually get to the last boss. And then one of the ones that I found weird is that there's these certain platforms, and they were yellow, and apparently they were made of cheese.
Sure.
And if you had the mouse power, you could walk all the way around them, so you could like defy gravity and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And it was not enjoyable.
Everyone knows
game
that
system.
mice become, gravitationally pulled towards cheese.
Yeah, it's true. It's true. Yeah.
Yeah. This is
Although it becomes a gravitational center.
It's also false. Actually, if you want to attract mice, you want some peanut butter. They actually prefer sweet things as opposed to cheese.
Yeah.
Ironically,
Depends on if you've got sweet cheese. Then you're
Why are you
winning
not a
both
game
methods.
designer, Dan?
Yeah. Well.
But I did look at the Wonder Boy Dragon Trap, and I think that remake it looks gorgeous, looks really good.
Yeah, it does.
And Aggelos basically won because it just turned out to be on sale when I was looking.
Yeah.
I believe that they've also done a successor series, which is part funded by Sega, which is called Monster Boy.
Oh, okay.
Which basically follows on with, I'm going to continuously call it Wonder Boy 3, because that's what it was on the Sega Master System. Wonder Boy 3, Monster Land, Dragon's Trap, whichever term. And they followed that on a little bit more. I'm aware that they did sort of Wonder Boy on the Mega Drive as well, which was just, I think there was like up to Wonder Boy 7, but some of them were only like Japan only style releases. And I just really miss sometimes that nice sort of simple walking around platform adventure game.
Gareth, have you ever tried Spelunky?
I have not tried Spelunky. I saw you and Dan in chat going on about Spelunky.
I feel that could be something you would very much, at first, enjoy, then get horribly frustrated with, and want to destroy all of your controllers in the attempt at besting this game, because it's wonderfully put together, it's wonderfully made. I find it very, very frustrating, unfortunately.
I haven't yet purchased it. I guaranteed will. Spelunky 2, are you talking about Spelunky 1 or Spelunky 2 or both?
Whichever one you want to get.
Well, Spelunky 1 was a much shorter version of what now Spelunky 2 is, and Spelunky 2's got a lot of different options, but the indie popularity of Spelunky 1 has spawned a successor, a sequel, which came out at the start of this month, at the end of September.
Yes.
And I agree with John. I love that. I watched so much to get that game. I've seen more people play it than I've played hours of certain games, like both Spelunky 1 and Spelunky 2. It's just incredible. But yes, I agree with John. You will enjoy. You're going to enjoy the caves. Then you're going to get to the jungle, and it's going to be like everything is trying to kill you.
Spelunky sounds a little bit like a reimagining of. Did anyone play Pitfall?
I have played Pitfall, but not for a long time, because it's.
I'm talking like proper old school Pitfall, because I had it.
2016.
Commodore 64.
Oh, Commodore 64
what I had
version, right?
Okay. No, it's not quite that, but it's similar-ish to a point. Whereas
the art style's taken from a 16-bit era sort of style.
Yeah. But whereas Pitfall is kind of on two main levels, it looks like. I'm looking at it. I've never played it. It's way beyond my time. 2 levels. This is it's a very similar. It's Spelunking, so you go from the top down on levels, and you just have lots of things along the way that can help, hinder, just be really annoying, as John will confirm.
So if you think about the opening sequence to Indiana Jones.
That
is a very good indicator for what Spelunky is.
Yeah.
You are a guy with a whip trying to get through this area, collect treasure, save the maiden, and progress to the next level. And there are many, many obstacles in your way to doing that.
Yeah. A lot like Pitfall, where you're a guy with a whip going through a jungle trying to collect treasure. Although, with just as an aside to last week's topic when I was on about digital card games, one of the themes for an Eternal set was exploration, and one of the factions is called Praxis, and there's like a lot of explorers, and there's giant mechs and stuff that they find buried in the deserts, and one of the characters, is it Intrepid Expeditor or something is called, and he's got a hat and a leather jacket and a whip. and whenever you play his character, whenever an artifact is played, he gets +1/+1. But his vocal line is, "Why is it always snakes?"
I would have liked to know if it was, "It belongs in a museum."
Yeah. Or if he ever goes up against a gun, does he against a swordsman? Does he automatically win? Is that what happens?
That is my favourite part of Indiana.
The thing that's weird with Eternal is one of its selling points is it is in a world where So imagine D&D with a hint of steampunk. So there's a lot of swords and stuff, but there are factions with guns. It's like the Wild West meets the medieval times.
Yeah.
And one of my little favourite archetypes is the archetype called the Valkyries, who are kind of like knights with mech wings, like steampunk mech wings. Are pretty cool. But that's an aside. Aggelos, at the moment, a little me is wondering is, am I being too hard of it because of the nostalgia to other video games where there was like the difficulty was in the relevant to the gameplay, and the control system was nice and simple. Whereas I'm just wondering if this guy's maybe over-egged the pudding where he's wanted to add this magic element that wasn't previously in Wonder Boy games. And maybe
he didn't want to get sued.
Well, he's not hidden anything with this.
All right, okay.
The sprite for Aggelos is not a million miles away from, I think he's called Shine On from Wonder Boy 7, which is the Mega Drive version. All he's done is basically palette swapped him. So his hair's blonde instead of blue. And a lot of the artwork, if you look at Aggelos, it looks very familiar. It's very stylized, and it's very much that sort of chibi anime / villain look.
Yeah.
And I think there's a lot of stuff that I like about Aggelos. I think I was about to say is maybe because I'm on Temple 3 out of probably 5 is the problem. That is because I've been playing it. I've played it an hour or so a day since I've been off, and it's is it that my experience of playing these kind of games, and I've kind of I have churned through some of the plot line and narrative quite quickly, and as I say, I accidentally acquired armor and weaponry, which was beyond where I was meant to be because it's got item slots. It's got item slots. And when it's weapon 1, weapon 2, gap, weapon 5, gap, armor 5,
See,
is that a victim of its non-linear styling?
I've played some of these remake sort of games, and I actually find them a bit boring. I have nostalgia for so many games of the past. I mean, I said in episode 1, I've been playing video games since I was 3, and I'd said before that I can be somewhat cynical of video games nowadays because my experience is so ancient, for lack of a better word. But when video game developers try to make these games that hark back to older, more nostalgic times, in my opinion, it must be incredibly difficult because they have to be walking the tightrope of making it so much like the old stuff that you enjoy it from a nostalgic point of view, but not making it so simple as older games tended to be that they're boring. Yeah. Or for me, at least, it might be different for other people, but that always seems to be the issue that I find with these nostalgic pieces. Another one that I'm thinking of is Sonic Mania, which was a big release. I know it's not an RPG and probably doesn't belong in this discussion, but it's the one I'm reminded of.
It's a retro formatting, and it was a retro reformatting because me and you spoke about it, and I thought what was really clever is they harked back to other Sonic games like Dr. Robotnik's Mean Bean Machine is one of the boss fights in one of the levels.
Mm-hmm. And they did something that none of the other Sonic games from that era did, which was they changed a lot of the mechanics from level to level. and the levels changed themselves, which most of the Sonic games from that time never did either. And they did little hints and tricks just to change the way that the game was being played and kept me going. If it wasn't for those things, I think I wouldn't have finished it.
It just got bored by the continuous repetitiveness. So
yeah, because the mechanics aren't that deep. If you go back to an old game like Sonic the Hedgehog, for example, it's kind of a one-note game. Like even the Mario games, which are a lot deeper than a lot of the games back then. I think that's why they hold up so well. They drop off. Like I'm not sure if I could get all the way through like Mario 1 these days.
Run to the right and jump, yeah.
As much as I enjoy that thing and I have nostalgia for it, I think I might just get bored.
Yeah.
I don't know how do you guys feel the same way about this kind of thing?
This is kind of what I'm saying is the problem with Aggelos.
Yeah.
Which is like the first hour and a half I was in and I was hooked. And the magic power didn't bother me because I only had one.
Yeah.
But now I've got so many and they all use the same button feature.
Yeah.
And if I'm not quick enough, it's the wrong thing. And there's another pet peeve actually, and I'll mention it quickly, is when you get the water power, it says, if you hold jump while you're in your bubble, you float. That's not true. You have to press jump and hold down the element button as you're jumping to make the float function work. Because I was there for absolutely ages, and I was like, I clearly know how to get to this door. I'm meant to float. And you just jump off the edge and you just go, and you can only replenish your magic by hitting something. And once you've killed everything in a room, it's one of those games where you have to leave the segment and then everything respawns. And I was just like, what's going on? Like, and I even went back to the tutorial page and I was like, no, it just says hold jump.
Yeah, it's wrong.
And then my brain was like, just do it with the element, do it while holding the element button, and it works. But now that I've got the fire element, if you hold down the element button, you can create a portal with 2 fire things. So it's like now I'm jumping, floating, and accidentally creating a fire portal. So I'm using 50% of my magic power.
Come on, Grandad, get a grip. You can do it.
Yeah. Clearly.
Just before we jump on to the next topic, I do just want to go back to John's point a little bit, which is, yes, we would get bored if they were just basic side-scrollers like they used to be. Do you want to know why? We've been spoiled by procedurally generated worlds. That's part of what I feel is a major problem. Ignoring the storytelling element of most stories. So now you think about if we're talking about all types of things. So Spelunky, procedurally generated. I played Binding of Isaac like nobody's business, procedurally generated.
Yeah,
exactly. And even talking about the DTCGs like Monster Train, all Slay the Spire. The paths you take and everything's randomized. It's all procedurally generated now.
I would argue that there have been some absolutely formative games that have ruined that kind of thing as well. In particular, my mind goes straight to Metal Gear Solid and the level of depth that is in that game. That's not procedurally generated. That's like a team working on crunch for 2 years non-stop, coming up with highly interactive worlds and a bonkers story that goes on top of it.
I can, in a similar generational point, the first Resident Evil game.
Yes.
And I'm going to make this counter argument, which again, tons of programming and stuff. Me, John, and 3 other guys at school all played Resident Evil when it came out. And all of us said that something, and the other one of us went, I didn't do that. We all finished the game. We all got the same ending.
I never finished it.
But
the truth comes out now.
A majority of us finished the game. But what I'm getting at is, like, you can meet Barry in so many different locations, or you can interact as if you go at one point, you can meet Wesker randomly, still in the mansion before he is feigning his injury and stuff. When you're playing as Chris, you can bump into Rebecca in different rooms. There's different interactions and different scenes. There's a couple of things that are the same, but I bet you could get 5 people playing Resident Evil in the same room, And as long as they're all like, oh yeah, I've played the game before, no one's like, oh, tell me what you did in this room. I bet you could sit in the middle of that room and you'd hear different dialogue and you'd get different pathways through the game.
Yeah, I would agree with that.
A bit like, but whereas Metal Gear Solid, you can get different dialogue and stuff because it was Easter egged in.
Yep.
And, Hideo Kojima is an absolute madman.
He really is.
But I think Resident Evil, for me, trumps Metal Gear Solid just for the fact that people were like, well, what happens if we did this instead? And there's like 3 or 4 little minute details that change, and it can dramatically change the plot line as well, or your experience of the characters that you meet in the room.
Yeah.
I would argue that having your brother reanimated via a chopped off hand from another character is untrumpable. That's not a word, but I'm going to make it one.
Untrumpable, yes.
Untrumpable.
There's probably negative connotations next to that word already because of the orange one involved.
Let's move on.
Moving on, though.
Well, from my nostalgia-laden retro desires of gaming, we're going to go on to what we were joking about with Dan as being a new venture, but the re-exploration that is Baldur's Gate 3, and what I think is mostly Dan and John's interest or potential lack of interest in this newly developed game, which has it made me think of something that John I've turned into the broadsword guy. Broadsword. Me and Oscar has become obsessed with that video after he caught me watching it.
Yes. It's wonderful.
So my son, occasionally when he's playing Fortnite, he'll be just shouting at his friend's broadsword, and no one knows what he's on about.
Kids are great like that.
But from what John was saying when we mentioned Spellbreak the other week, one of the issues I think people have had with Baldur's Gate 3 is that it's a founder's pack, as they like to call it, and it's a lot of money in. And I remember saying to John, I saw the trailer for Spellbreak and it looked very interesting. And then I showed John the pricing for what was beta access. From what I remember for Spellbreak, the beta access was £55, £80, $99.99.
Best value at $99.99 though. Oh yeah, give me that in-game currency and everything that goes with it.
Well, I mean...
So let's talk Baldur's Gate.
Let's hand it over to Dan. I'm sure he has some thoughts.
So I have a lot to say on this subject, unfortunately, as you can probably tell. Sorry, I did just peek out the mic then. That's why I twisted my head quickly. Where do I begin? So first off...
it's going to be good when the disappointment peeks out the microphone.
Yeah. So first off, I did raise this point just before, but we said we were going to hold off. What happened to game demos? Remember when you used to be able to download like a 15, 30, minute game demo? Now, just to get the game demo, you have to pay the full price to get early access. And you will not get full access for at least a year, is what they're saying.
I think me and John have some fond memories of PlayStation Magazine and demo discs.
So I said it. Xbox was the same for me, yeah.
Do you remember Bloody Roar, John?
I do remember Bloody Roar.
Or the Tekken 2 demo disc? How many hours did we put
I think
into
that
those?
Tekken 2 demo disc stopped working because we actually scratched the hell out of it just from play.
Yeah.
And you only had 2 characters.
You only had, what was it? Jun
and Lee, is it? He was like the Jackie Chan character.
Yeah.
Lei Oolong.
That's right. So I would actually argue with that opening statement from Dan. If I may have the floor for a moment.
You may begin, yes.
Excellent.
Yes.
So demo discs were viable because that you are only taking up 100 or 200 megabytes of a disc. These games these days have high definition textures and polygons and everything that goes into a game that makes these games pop these days. And I don't think you could deny that actually Baldur's Gate 3 looks very, very good. I'm impressed with how the game looks.
Yeah,
it has this distinctively Dragon Age Origins feel about it, which I hold up as a very, very good game. of a fantasy style. I think having a demo for that would be a good idea. I'm not sure how Larian Studios would be able to carry on going without
also,
outside help.
As my interjection, if you were to do a game like Baldur's Gate, the limitations, you'd be one race, one class, just as a taster.
I mean, you could do.
I'm just trying to think. I'm just trying to think what they would do.
Yeah, you could do like a scene or two for a demo. It is possible. I'm not going to deny that. I'm just thinking for them, they have to do this. I would imagine because they're probably bleeding money. I mean, they're not a big studio. They're taking on a monumental project such as they are. I mean, for them, it's probably like the project of a lifetime.
Well, let's scale it back a little bit. So, Larian Studios.
Yeah.
You know what they produced just before Baldur's Gate 3?
Divinity: Original Sin.
Divinity: Original Sin 1 and 2, yeah, and that wasn't a small game.
No, it wasn't.
In the subsets, they had the money and stuff like that. But if we do go back to the, they weren't a big studio. They will be now because within the first 2 days of release, they had 70,000 concurrent players on Steam.
Good.
So those 70,000 people have paid the £60 each. So that is fair enough. I'm not sure what's happened with Gareth just there on the video.
On the video, he's been visited by an angel. It seems like.
Yes, it does look like it.
Light is shining down upon him.
So they got a lot of viewers, and they're going to earn the money from it. I would hope, to be able to continue it. But then the second aspect is the whole. They've said that it will be at least a year before the full version is released. At least a year. They didn't put a date and time on it. And as far as I'm concerned, if a company doesn't do that effectively, then I feel like I would just be paying for the continuous development of it. That might never happen. I'm a very goals orientated person.
I mean, that's fine. I would argue that they're being upfront by saying that it's not going to be ready for a year. I haven't bought the game. I considered it, but I haven't bought the game. I want to see more. And that's how everyone should be. If people want to get in on the game, they have to do that with the caveat knowing that they are not getting a full game. And if they don't like that, they should, decide with their money. That's the adage that everyone uses. Decide with your dollars, with your wallet.
Yeah. That's exactly what I'm doing. Yeah. I'm doing the exact same. I'm going to watch it. I mean, going back to your graphical items, you are entirely right. There are several graphical, just incredible graphic scenes that I've seen. Now, there's a couple of issues where, I saw a couple of spell effects where it was bleeding through.
Apparently, there are some T-poses going around as well.
Yes, there are, yeah. And also just awkward mechanics through doors and things like that. But I suppose this is why you come out in early access.
Yeah.
And these things are available. But I will probably, and this is now going to be the crux of what we're about to discuss as far as I'm concerned, I'll probably still not put any money into it because it is a D&D franchise, or not quite a franchise in the same respect, but it takes a lot of its lore from D&D, the World of Faerun, etc. It had to have a Wizards of the Coast designer on it. And the Wizards of the Coast designer that they elected to put on this game, of all games, is a gentleman by the name of Mike Merles. And I hesitate to even call him a gentleman because
is he a
he has had several. He's beyond a cat, I would think. Let's put it this way. So he was on D&D 4th edition. That went real well anyway. And was skipped over for 5th edition. Became a co-producer on 5th edition eventually. Then the person he was producing with walked out, right? Never to be seen again.
Okay.
And all of a sudden, then Mike Mills was removed from 5th edition.
Okay.
Why? First off, it was his very abrasive attitude. Every employee apparently hated him. But because he's a lifer with Wizards of the Coast, it probably cost more for them to give him his marching papers than to hide him away somewhere. And you know what? To be fair, it was okay up to a point because they took him off 5th edition late 2018, and 5th edition continued to come out. And whilst you might not have noticed it, the first few books that came out in 5th edition are he has particular views. So one is his particular views on the difference between races and races in D&D. and they strike me as someone who should not be producing books that may influence, especially teenagers. And if you're trying to teach a younger person this, first off, because he was very strong and adamant that some races are better than others, no matter what.
What?
And that has heavy undertones anyway.
Yeah, that's not great. Okay.
He was reportedly, I'm saying reportedly here, misogynist to multiple people in the workplace. Multiple people left, including one of the only black female designers who left. And so there's a lot of things that happened, and I just want to finish off the story of these are all allegedlys, but to be on 4th edition and then moved because you had certain ideas to 5th edition to then be a co-producer and then be just taken off 2 years ago. And the books have since improved in quality, by the way. A lot of changes are happening. So kobold races and orc races had negative penalty points. They had a negative to strength and negative to intelligence. They now won't have that from tomorrow. So things have improved. So he was taken off 5th edition. He was kind of hidden away. No one knew where he'd gone. Baldur's Gate 3!
All right, I would... How much of your dislike of the Baldur's Gate 3 project goes solely on this man's shoulders?
A good 80%. 80% easy.
I feel like you're
projecting.
sort of like projecting a little bit and
I am.
Polluting your feelings on this guy onto the hard work of hundreds of other people, unfortunately.
No, I 100% am. But then this goes to the review that I was reading before, which is that the game's rendering engine is incredibly beautiful, which is exactly what we discussed. But the characters that it actually renders are shallow, trite, and frequently downright hateful. And the storyline, because of their opinions on the other races and their opinions towards each other. Now, I don't want to give too much of the story away, but you would have seen it in the trailers and you'll have seen it being played. There is an element of mind flayers have come to take over things and over people and stuff like that. And apparently the storyline focuses not necessarily on helping other people, but on improving yourself and getting this sorted with yourself only and thinking only about yourself, to the point where some quests you can completely refuse to help other people as opposed to be given any option to help them. And it's kind of that negative aspect about the shallowness of them, and they're only thinking about themselves without the option. Now, this is what's why it's connected to me. If there was an option, if there was a distinct option, help this person, don't help this person, and you chose not to help this person, well, that's the game. You've made an option. It's exactly the same as we talk about any story-based thing. You're going to make an option not to help this person because it's maybe in your character's interest, maybe it's the way you want to play your character.
Well, that's a little bit like Red Dead 2, isn't it? Where there was a guy who streamed Red Dead Redemption 2, and he decided he was going to purposely murder all the suffragettes. Now, that's not a choice of the game. That's not a narrative decision. That's a player choice.
Yeah, exactly.
And I can understand where you're coming from. If the game... Because Baldur's Gate is a pseudo-open world game. So you should feel that there is a slight sandbox element. There should be like a couple of choices open to you. I can save this guy. I cannot save this guy. That's fine. If the option is literally self-preservation, I've not played the game and I don't understand how the narrative has been put to me. So there's certain games, again, Resident Evil, self-preservation, but occasionally you get these minor characters who you can help, or they help you. Yeah. So it's all down to the context, and I think John's concern is that your context is there was this guy. He's known for these opinions. Wizards of the Coast is a harbour for these problematic employees. Magic the Gathering artists, tons of Magic artists. Noah Bradley being super prominent of recent. Who they were these guys, and they basically used their position to get women. They'd pressure women into having sex with them, and then they were like slut shaming among like, oh, if you don't have sex with me, I'll just tell other people in the community that you're a whore anyway, and they'll believe me because I've got precedent in this community over you. Yeah. And I can understand that negativity, and I can understand that's a bad connotation. Wizards of the Coast have done everything they can to distance themselves from Noah Bradley. There was an unfortunate moment, though, that they released a set literally with tons of Noah Bradley art in it just after he made the announcement, but they'd already printed the product.
Yeah.
So he gets his commission.
I mean, I can't argue too hard because I haven't done as much research into it as you have, Dan, and I obviously haven't played the game. I would like to at some point in the game when there's more of it available to actually play, but I don't know. I understand where you're coming from, and if that is the case, then that is a bit of a downer. Because obviously I just put like 20 minutes into arguing how important story is for me, for myself and in games. If that's true, then that's definitely a knock against it.
Yeah, I mean, like I said, it's just I'm just going to war with my wallet, so to speak, exactly as you said, which is I'm not going to buy Baldur's Gate probably. I might watch it being played, but part of what I'm thinking about is influenced by that. I love Divinity Original Sin 2. I love Baldur's Gate 2. And the idea of the Baldur's Gate 3 was a bit interesting because it involves illithids, as you will have seen in the trailer, and if you've watched any of the game. But I just feel that, I mean, to have him be the official, Wizards of the Coast director on it is one thing, but then to also whether those two are connected, and this is important. Now, I will preface this: the fact that in the one of the first missions is about this illithid, this illithid basically that you've got to either help or kill civilians. That's the choice you're given. So it's kind of that's what I'm on about. It's that is the only viewpoint that I can see on it from what I've read and what I've seen up to now. So whether those two are connected, whether the person who is now one of the directors on it, one of the production directors on it, and that kind of role playing element is connected, I couldn't tell you. I wouldn't know. But the fact that he's on it already puts me off. That one of the very first missions just kind of says to me, not really sure whether it's my thing. It looks real nice, but if they're going to continue down this way, I probably won't buy it.
So are you upset that they don't give you a more grey area option in that?
Yes, it's. I think they're considering things black and white. I mean, so basically, what happens is there is an illithid who is trapped.
Okay.
And he knows that he's not going to, or he or she, I'm not entirely sure, knows that that they're not going to be able to get out of this rubble alive. So what they're doing is they've convinced some villagers that they're a child and that they're trying to pull this child out of the rubble.
Okay.
And then you either have to pass a really difficult charisma check, right, to convince these villagers that actually that's an illithid. You just leave it, and we'll sort it however we're going to sort it. Or the civilians attack you, and you have to kill them.
I mean, maybe the designers of the game want you to feel like there is no choice in that particular aspect, and that's the take that they want you to have. Because I mean, I remember from the two other Divinity games that Larian are actually one of the better companies for making grey aspects of choice available to the player character.
Yeah.
I mean, I find that I can't obviously speak too highly of it because it sounds a little bit like it's boxing you in. But I would imagine that's just a way that they are trying to get you into a particular mindset with that character, or they want you to hate that character because they're making you make this choice.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Or perhaps they're just trying to create the basic narrative railroad, which is like they want you to believe that this is a child as well.
Yeah, well,
now if there are other choices or lack of choice in that perspective later on in the game, and it continued to happen, then definitely I would be highly skeptical of it. But just there isn't enough for me to go on to just damn it right now.
I mean,
like I said, it is just one element of it, and that's of what I've seen and what the review that I've read. So please, do your own kind of looking into it and things like that. I'm not. This is my opinion, 100%. But and this is why I'm a little bit shocked. I did play Divinity Original Sin 2. You got 4 options basically in every dialogue.
Yeah.
Whereas this, you got 2, and that's kind of how much of that is the influence of the D&D aspect of it.
Has anyone actually spoken from Larian Studios? I mean, I would imagine that there are a lot of people unhappy with this particular scenario. So, has there been any official word from them saying like this is just the way that we wanted the story to go, or maybe they haven't put other choices into the game yet? It is early access. There is still time for them to pull back on this particular option and say, hey.
I mean, also with D&D being listed as as Dan will understand from it as a DM, there is skill check levels 30 to 35, which is an impossible skill check. So it's purposely like you can try, you can do anything you want, but you're not going to get there.
Yeah,
and that's sometimes used by like a DM in a rule 0 kind of scenario, where like the DM might, instead of going, oh, this is rule 0, what I say goes, he'll go, okay, I'll set the skill level and I'll purposely set it to an impossible factor, without getting my DM screen from just behind me and lording it in front of the camera. It's just a case of currently, as John says, it's early access and they've failed to create the level of immersion relevant for that scenario.
I mean, I'm sure that Larian doesn't want another Mass Effect 3 on their hand. They don't want they don't want the people to scream and shout on their virtual message boards and tell them, this isn't what we want, we need you to change this. I'm sure they don't want that scenario.
I mean, now is still a good place for them to change it if they need to. I just looked up and it was, up to now, what's been released is 25 hours worth of content and 1/5 of the game's world maps. They've included 16 races and 6 classes up to now, with more to be added. I'm not sure what that more is, whether it's more races, whether it's more classes. So there is still room for the movement here. But, devil's advocate, they have pulled off, a really good early access. Like I said, they had 70,000 concurrent players. So that is worth it in my eyes, as far as I'm concerned. Like, they might be getting those in. Those people really want to play it. They're going to get the full game, etc. It was so popular, the early access, that Steam had issues in the first hour or something like that. So, I can kind of see that aspect. But changes need to be made. Thankfully, it's not engine changes, because they typically are the worst ones. But I feel a shoehorn like that from the same company that made Divinity Original Sin, where you had options galore. I don't know. I don't know like I said, I don't know how much is the design for the game and how much is the design input from a certain Wizards of the Coast designer.
I mean, with Wizards of the Coast being mentioned, like their books and games do put a lot on racial traits, racial features, and statistics. So this is part of the reason I'm excited for, I think it's in a couple of weeks, Tasha's Cauldron of Everything, because it actually puts the onus on your class choices rather than your racial traits.
Yeah.
As to how your skills and your character building works.
You get a lot more flexibility,
Yeah. And it's actually designed it's basically like a soft reset on character building in places. So instead of it being like, being a human's really good because I get +1 to everything. So that's that stat block. It's like, but you can be any race you want, but the key factors are going to be more the factors like what job did you take, what class have you taken. They're going to have more of a feature. I think they're going to purposely edge background in more as well.
Yeah.
For the character building things, because there's times where I don't know if I shared it with you guys, the Joe Cat Crap Guide to D&D, the character sheet. And he's basically on about how the change from 4th edition to 5th edition and the use of things like bonds and flaws and stuff like that to help you actually not just be a stat block with a class. Try and help you develop some RPG.
I have actually used this to help me roleplay. I would like to say probably my final word on Baldur's Gate 3 Dan, you mentioned that the early access has 25 hours of content, and it's £50. I paid £50 for this game that we were talking about at the beginning of the show, and it apparently is about 25 hours long. So, as devil's advocate, yet again, I would say that, you know, if you're going to get more value out of that later on, as I intend to do, to wait until buy it then. But if you're okay with spending £50 on a game that you're going to get 25 hours of content out of, go ahead. And form your own opinions, obviously. Or, you know, wait a little bit, which is what I'm going to do.
Yeah, no, I 100% agree, both for the cost and Garrett's previous point. In terms of the cost for this, there are going to be some games out there that you're going to spend an amount of money on, and you're going to think, probably a little bit expensive, but I really love the game. And then there's also going to be games where you spend a lot of money on it and you think, Jesus Christ, I'm never going to finish this. Yeah. You know, there's going to be the extremes, because not every game design is the same, which is good. Yeah. But yeah, just again to sum up my final point on Baldur's Gate 3 is I go into it having a negative opinion, so that does shade a lot of what I'm saying. However, it has been proven by the first reviews in the first few hours that I've seen played. Whether those are connected, whether the first is connected with the latter, I'm not sure. However, I'm not exactly a fan of the kind of putting. I mean, they refer to them as monstrous races and stuff like that. I'm not a fan of the way that they word it like that. As an example, so some half orc is a monstrous race, but it's classified as a standard race in the player's handbook. So we will see what happens with Baldur's Gate 3. I do hope that they pull it back. If they had just had a third option, add the grey area option in. That's all I want. Yeah. That's all I'm asking for.
Just quickly, pull back to me. Aggelos, I would not have spent the £20 retail price on. I would, if it was £20. My opinions of it, instead of it being it's a great little trip down memory lane with a frustrating control feature. Yeah, I'd actually be like, for £20, I want this, and this. Like one of the this week, one of the games I was looking to purchase after we mentioned it last week, and I was still hoping it was on sale, but it hasn't. The PSN sale changed. Is I was like, you know what, I might pick up that Digimon game. Got nothing else to do, and I wanted that nostalgia vibe, and I wanted something that I had some relatability to, but also it had the combination of being Digimon and a sleuth game interested me, but in my eyes, it $44.99.
I'm sure it was on sale for a third of that as well.
It was. This Monday was the change of the PSN sale, so it went from the Big in Japan sale to Generations or whatever they call it, and then it's going to go in about a month to the Christmas sales.
Okay.
But this is the value, and I'm sure we've all also had an experience with. I've had it with video games, I've had it with animes, I've had it with books. And you read the first 50 pages, you watch the first 2 episodes, you play the first hour, and it is horrible. But then for some reason, there's just that little twist, that little change, that little direction move, or that little just that little change. And you go from, the first couple of episodes of that anime are hard, but then when such and such a character appears, it just takes off. It's amazing. Or, I was playing such and such a game, but the first hour was really dull, but then this event happens and then I was in, But I've also had games. Sorry.
What you're describing is the Netflix series of The Witcher.
Yes. Yeah, you are. Yeah. You are. 100%. Yeah.
But then, have you also had the reverse? And then it's equal the other way, where it's oh my god, I've put the game in. Wow, the title sequence is amazing. Wow, the opening cutscene is amazing. Wow, this opening gameplay is amazing. Hours 2 and 3, and you're this is meant to be a 40-hour game. I've just not got this anymore.
It's not quite hour 2 and 3. It was much more like hour 40 and 50. But Game of Thrones.
Oh, on that bombshell.
Yes, indeed. By the way, you have just given me the topic for next podcast, definitely. I agree. You draw your own conclusions. That's all we can say. I am very jaded by several things that are out in the D&D sphere. But if you like a game, buy it. Show them you like it. Show your developers, whether it's an indie one, whether it's a Japanese developer famous for things like that, or whether it is as something that is going to get bigger as Larian. So yeah. Yeah.
I think this evening's been a very mixed bag on opinions.
Down the downer. Okay, you can just say it. It's fine.
Not at all. I think we just, me and John just chipped in with our comments, and you were like, actually, there was like a little look on your face. You're like, actually, maybe I am holding this one guy accountable, but you're still watching it, and that's how you're going to find out if you're going to be interested in the future.
Exactly. Yeah.
And it's like, it's like going to the gym. You don't go to session 1 and session 2 and you're suddenly ripped. You're like, what?
What is this gym you mentioned?
I think I know it. I think he's down the road.
Oh, okay.
The one I know is stateside. But, sometimes it's a slow burner rather than, you're straight in.
Yeah.
And from what you've said, knowing sort of the source material, that kind of game has never really grabbed me. And I think John tried to get me to play one of the Baldur's Gate games a couple of years ago.
Yeah,
it's one of the
like I said when we first started talking about Baldur's Gate 3. I think if you wanted to play one of those, or for anyone else that's interested in that kind of game, either play the original Divinity Original Sin, which is fairly cheap nowadays, or you could play Dragon Age Origins, which has aged really, really well. I actually have wanted to play that again at some point. It was made during the time when BioWare was at their peak, when they were making the Mass Effect games, and it's a real great game.
You know what that means, John?
What's that?
It's going to be on EA Access on the Xbox Game Pass pretty soon. That's got to be.
It's another reason to have the Game Pass.
But yeah, just to finish off what Gareth said again, and I know I don't want to keep going around to it, but yeah, you've said it exactly right, especially on this topic, which is his potential Mike Mell's potential involvement in the game means I'm not going to buy it outright. Doesn't mean I'm not going to watch it. I'm not that completely negative against it, because I'm going to watch it and see whether it does strike me as that's a one-off, kind of thing. Maybe it's not all like that. Maybe it is worth it. I don't know. I won't buy it probably whilst in early access. I'll wait until it's out. But yeah, don't, never just jump to conclusions in that sense. Always look at it a little bit further, I guess.
Yeah.
Always watch, at least. Watch if not buy.
Yeah. I mean, this is going back to the example of demo discs. Is we've got Twitch and the streaming sites. If you're unsure about a game, there's probably someone being paid to play it for you to see it. And
YouTube. Don't forget YouTube. Roleplay Life podcast YouTube. On YouTube. We also do videos of these things.
Yeah. But there's always a source of finding out what's out there, or learning something. And the best thing, podcast, and it's free. And it's free.
Just like this podcast, search for Roleplay Life podcast on your iTunes or any other way you get your podcast into your ears.
iTunes, Spotify, Amazon, although not on John's Alexa, but that's beside the point.
I mean, I've listened to it on Spotify the other day and try not to cry too much when I hear my own voice. So,
did you like the robot?
Yeah, I quite enjoyed on the YouTube video John's little addition.
Actually,
the microphone that John uses looks very similar to this style of microphone, which I've used for nearly 15 years in bands, opposed to the fancy microphone that I bought for trying to do a podcast with, which turns me into Optimus Prime. I think that's everything for this evening.
It is.
I think that's the end of everything. We will hopefully be back same time, same bat channel, same bat time, same bat folk. Thank you very much.
Bye, everybody. Good night.
Good night. Au revoir. Bye now.